In the end, it wasn't the scream of the dying that haunted us. It was the silence, Earth holding her breath, just before she cried out, before the sky tore open, before the firestorms rolled over city skylines, before humanity knew its place in the story, there was peace. Fragile, mundane, beautiful peace. It was the kind of stillness you don't realize is special until it's gone. Fishermen on the Atlantic reeled in nets as the morning sun kissed the waves. Children in Karachi chased soccer balls through dusty alleyways. In Paris, the cafes opened early, and lovers fought softly over pastries and politics. Somewhere in Montana, a woman carved violin parts by hand, humming a tune no one had written down. Satellites glided silently over it all, eyes in the sky watching a world that believed tomorrow would still come. We thought we had time. We always do. And then, the stars went dark. Not all of them. Just a few at first. Easy to miss, unless you were watching closely, which someone always was. A dozen observatories blinked warnings into the digital void. Something was blocking starlight in motion, fast, massive, deliberate. But space is big, and fear moves slow. By the time we understood what we were looking at, they were already here. They didn't arrive in ships. No elegant vessels or emissaries. No fanfare. They fell. The first one broke atmosphere like a meteor, but it didn't burn. It glided, black and jagged like obsidian shaped by the wind of the gods. Miles long, bristling with angles that made no sense, geometry that seemed to fight your eyes. A living cathedral carved from war. It struck the Pacific with a sound no one heard, but everyone felt. A kind of pressure behind the eyes. The kind of silence that lives under your skin. And then it spoke, not in a language, not in emotion, not even in words, not really. It was a signal, raw, incomprehensible, undeniable. It carved through satellites, hijacked broadcast towers, rewrote cell signals. It played through phone speakers and coffee machines in the teeth of anyone with a metal filling. And finally, the voice came. Cold, mechanical, sterile. You are contamination. Prepare for sterilization. No negotiation. No manifesto. No warning. Just judgment. We didn't know who they were, what they were. But later, when the dust began to settle, we named them the Titans. Not because they were gods, but because they thought they were. Machines, we think. Or maybe something far worse. Intelligence divorced from emotion. Precision without empathy. A civilization of logic, eons ahead of us, that had decided something was wrong with Earth, with us, and they didn't want to talk about it. They wanted to cleanse it. In the first hour, 7 major cities disappeared. Not bombed, unmade. Beijing, Seattle, Lagos, Mumbai, gone, like chalk wiped from a blackboard. One moment towers stood against the sky. The next, dust bloomed upward in complete, clinical erasure. We didn't even have time to scream. Military command centers lit up like Christmas. Jets scrambled. Missiles launched. Defense grids activated in every hemisphere. None of it mattered. We were trying to sweat thunder with paper fans. Orbital defense stations, once hailed as the Great Shield of Earth, were torn apart in less time than it takes to warm a cup of coffee. Lasers of searing ultraviolet carved holes through steel like butter. Kinetic rods, our deadliest secret, were caught mid-flight and flung back at us. The sky burned with our own weapons. And yet, in the chaos, something strange happened. People didn't run, not all of them. In a battered NORAD control room deep beneath the Rockies, Colonel Rafe Donovan stood in front of a flickering console. His uniform was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. He had lost contact with both his sons. He didn't sit. He didn't speak much. But when the last of the Skylance orbital cannons came online, and everyone around him hesitated, he pressed the button himself. "Tell Command this," he said quietly, staring at the screen. "Earth bleeds, but she bites back." The Skylance fired. One great shot of compressed energy that took years to build and milliseconds to burn. And for the first time, we hurt them. One of the Titans, a carrier, we think, staggered. It didn't fall, but it paused, as if confused, as if surprised. We had made a dent. And in that dent, something changed. We realized something beautiful, terrifying. They weren't invincible. Every human instinct, every story we'd ever told ourselves about aliens or machines or godlike threats, always assumed we'd be the ants under a boot. And maybe we were. But ants bite. Across the globe, people began to rise. Not from courage, not from bravery, from refusal. Refusal to kneel. Refusal to go quietly. Refusal to believe that our love, our madness, Our messiness made us wrong. A baker in Naples threw a brick at a reconnaissance drone. A high school teacher in Kenya organized her students into a communications cell. A welder in Detroit turned his garage into a weapons lab. No orders, no generals, just humans, becoming more human in the face of extinction. We didn't know if we could win, but we knew this. We would not go gentle into the sterilized dark. And the Titans, they noticed. They slowed, recalculated. Machines, for all their cold power, understand efficiency. They expected surrender, collapse, passive extermination. What they got was rage. What they got was grit. What they got was humanity. It wasn't a victory. Not yet. Not even close. But in that first day, as the fires rose and the sky turned red and the oceans hissed with plasma and fury, one truth was born in blood and silence. We would not die quietly. Not today. Not ever. History doesn't remember peace until it's gone, but it will always remember the moment we stood back up. This was that moment. They say gravity is the one law that never breaks, that no matter how far you drift, how high you climb, gravity is always there, tugging, holding, reminding you where you came from. But on that day, gravity screamed. It began just before dawn in Tokyo, not with sirens, not with news, but with a strange hum that no one could place. A low, vibrating tension in the bones. People rubbed their ears. Birds flew in panic spirals. And then the sky tore open. Not metaphorically, not poetically. It tore. Streaks of black fire carved across the heavens. Not missiles, not ships. Things. Shapes too fast to process, too big to ignore. They didn't descend. They fell. Dozens of them. Each one shaped like some terrible god's idea of a spear, black metal, and blue flame, wrapped in gravity distortions that bent the world around them like it was fabric. They fell with precision, with malice, with finality. The first one hit outside Shinjuku. The earth didn't just shake. It recoiled. The impact sucked sound out of the air. Roads buckled like torn paper. Glass exploded across entire neighborhoods. Skyscrapers didn't topple, they folded, as if an unseen hand simply clenched a fist around them. Then another came. Then 10 more. Each one fell like a judgment. Across the globe, Paris, Johannesburg, Santiago, New York. They didn't hit military targets. They hit us. Some called them warforms. Others called them gods in armor. But most didn't name them at all. There was no time. Just running, screaming, dying. They were machines. Yes, but not like anything we'd seen. Each stood stories tall, limbs like razors, torsos like engines, cores pulsing with something older than war. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They walked, and the world shuddered. And for a few long, breathless hours, humanity broke. But not all of it. Not all of us. Beneath the Rockies, in the fractured bones of an old NORAD facility, Colonel Rafe Donovan stood in silence. One hand braced against a console, his eyes locked on the chaos flashing across the fractured monitors. He didn't blink. He watched a live feed from Tokyo, watched a child huddle beneath a crushed stairwell, clutching a plastic toy the color of sunshine, watched a Titan stalk past the ruins. Someone whispered behind him, "Sir, what do we do?" Donovan exhaled, slow and steady. His voice was soft, steel wrapped in sorrow. "We stand." And across the globe, others did the same. In Sao Paulo, resistance fighters turned subway trains into mobile bunkers. In Kiev, a grandmother picked off a drone with a Mosin rifle older than her. In Los Angeles, ex-gang members and SWAT shared ammo and stories on rooftops, firing side by side at machines that didn't bleed. It wasn't strategy. It wasn't organized. It wasn't even smart. It was human, which meant it was messy, fierce, brilliant in the way only desperation can be. And because it was human, it was dangerous. Orbit was still burning. Our satellites mostly gone. Our fleets, silent tombs. But there, hidden in Earth's shadow, was one last chance. Skylance 1. It had one shot left. No lock, no targeting system, no backup. Just a pulse of unstable energy, a dying reactor, and Lieutenant Ava Morgan. She'd lost her entire unit in Houston. Half her left arm was synthetic. Her eye flickered blue when she was angry, which was always. Everyone said the cannon wouldn't work, that they couldn't be targeted, that nothing human-built could punch through Titan shielding. Ava didn't argue. She just calculated. And when a Titan carrier opened its bay doors for just a moment, when the next wave of death prepared to fall, she took the shot. A beam of white-hot light carved across the void. Silence. Then impact. The carrier erupted in slow motion, a chain reaction spiraling outward. Warforms blinked and dropped. fire bloomed in orbit. A burning god fell from the stars, its limbs snapping, its core darkening, and plunged into the Pacific. The footage didn't stream online. The internet was already a graveyard, but it didn't need wires to travel. It moved in voices, on radios, on scribbled notes passed hand to hand in the dark. We hit them. They fell. They're not invincible. And something else happened. The Titans, so swift, so precise, paused. It was microscopic. A flicker of hesitation, a stutter in the pattern. But it was there. They had recalculated, reassessed. They hadn't expected this. They came expecting collapse. They got Earth's middle finger. In Istanbul, a warform landed on the Blue Mosque. It expected ruin. Instead, it found resistance. Engineers had reinforced the stone. Artists had booby-trapped the courtyard with hidden charges. Pilgrims had laced every corridor with sensors, and every rooftop with makeshift drones carrying fire. A choir of voices rose beneath the chaos, not in prayer. In defiance, one old imam, whitebeard singed by heat, leaned into a salvage transmitter and whispered across the frequencies. This is sacred ground, and so is every inch of this earth. The wolfform fell hours later, crumbling, melting, sinking into the very foundation it tried to crush. In Colorado, Donovan watched it unfold. A new data stream lit up the screen. The Titan carrier, the one Ava shot, it was gone. No signals, no movement, dead. He stared at the black spot on the map. Then he turned to the room. "Tell the world," he said. "We drew blood. Now let's bleed them dry." That day didn't end with a flag or a speech. No triumph, no anthem, but it ended with something better. Hope. The kind that doesn't shine. The kind that glows. It burned in the rubble, in the hands that reached out instead of running, in the tears wiped from dirty cheeks by strangers who were suddenly brothers. It whispered through broken radios. It hummed in the wires. It pulsed in every single heart that refused to stop beating. The Titans came expecting surrender. What they got was humanity, unbowed, unburnt, screaming through the smoke. They came expecting silence. What they found was a world that still had a voice. Some wars are fought in boardrooms, others in trenches. But this war was forged in scrapyards. It lived in alleyways. It breathed through sparks and oil and the sound of people refusing to die. We didn't have the tech. We didn't have the numbers. But we had something no machine could calculate. Fire. Not the kind that burns buildings. The kind that burns inside. The kind that whispers through clenched teeth. You can take everything, but you will never take my will. They called it the resistance, but there was no central command. No medals. No anthems. Just pockets of humanity tied together by wires, whispers, and stubbornness. It started with those who refused to run. Mechanics, coders, grandparents, mothers who taught their kids how to wire explosives using toaster parts. Students who turned laundry rooms into radio stations. A retired piano tuner who figured out how to blind a warform using only sound. And in the wreckage of our cities, they built. In Detroit, a machinist named Leon Gutierrez turned his garage into a weapons bay. By day, he scavenged dead factories. By night, he welded together walking tanks from construction rigs and cannibalized appliances. The first prototype? He named it Rosie, after his grandmother. Rosie lasted 2 minutes in her first battle, but those 2 minutes saved a convoy of children. That was enough. In Nairobi, college students turned delivery drones into surveillance swarms. In Tokyo, underground hackers created viruses that could hijack Titan targeting systems for just 8.6 seconds. That doesn't sound like much, but for a resistance fighter with a nail bomb and a suicide switch, 8.6 seconds is eternity. In Buenos Aires, kids used soot and berries to paint camouflage on their parents' armor. It wasn't about the gear. It was about the ritual. Every wrench turned, every bolt tightened. It all said the same thing. We still matter. We are still human. The war changed. We stopped fighting like soldiers, started fighting like survivors. No rules, no symmetry, no strategy books, just grit, improvisation, a refusal to play by the Titans' rules. They came expecting efficiency. What they got was chaos. Beautiful, furious, human chaos. In the highlands of Scotland, sheep farmers blew open the sides of cliffs to trap a warform in a canyon it couldn't escape. In Pakistan's northern valleys, wingsuit snipers used mountain updrafts to land on Titan backs. In Chicago, a jazz band figured out how to send encrypted Morse signals through their instruments. Bebop became battle language. Trumpets became transmitters. The Titans didn't understand. They couldn't, because we weren't a species. We were a story, and stories are hard to kill. One of those stories wore a dented helmet and boots wrapped in duct tape. She carried a sledgehammer the size of her chest. Her name was Captain Imani Rao, civil engineer, widow, survivor of the Bangalore pulse bomb. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She rebuilt. In the underground ruins of Bangalore, she gathered janitors, welders, nurses, anyone who still had hands. She trained them, led them, not with rank, but with presence. When a Titan warform breached the tunnels, Imani didn't run. She climbed it, strapped homemade charges to its cooling vents, whispered something to herself, maybe a prayer, maybe a promise. Then she roared across the open comms, "Tell your gods, Earth belongs to us." The tunnel collapsed in fire. The Titan died. She didn't. Every day, the resistance grew teeth. We learned. Titan armor, cracked under magnetic fields. Their optics, blinded by focused microwave pulses. Their AI, confused by raw human audio noise. So we screamed into their frequencies, played punk rock and whale songs and lullabies through hacked satellites. Some called it foolish, but others, they saw what it did to the machines. Even if it didn't kill them, it rattled them, and that was enough. From the ashes, we rose in 1,000 names. The Iron Choir in Mexico City, former inmates turned shock troops. The Ember Sisters in Cairo, medics with flamethrowers made from oxygen tanks. The Sky Rats of Manila, teenagers surfing collapsing rooftops on drones, dropping bombs made of scrap and hope. We weren't winning, but we were fighting, and we were fighting on our feet, not crawling, not kneeling. We were building, from scraps, from memory, from love. In Berlin, just before the communications tower finally went dark, a young girl's voice crackled across the frequency. They think they understand war, but they've never seen us like this. They think we break, but we build teeth. It wasn't a message. It was a prophecy. Because by then, the Titans weren't just facing resistance. They were facing reckoning. We weren't fighting for survival anymore. We were fighting for the right to exist without permission, for the right to be loud and illogical and alive. And every bolt we turned, every scream we sent into the stars, every ridiculous, desperate, beautiful invention was proof of one thing. Iron is in our blood, and fire is in our soul. We weren't supposed to win. We weren't supposed to last. But the moment we picked up a wrench and said, "Not yet," the war changed forever. Sometimes, after the screaming stops, after the fires die down, after the last echo fades into dust, what remains isn't peace. It's silence. And silence isn't mercy. It's just the breath between punches. That's what the survivors in Dresden learned. Dresden had been spared in the opening hours of the invasion, not because of strategy, not because of strength, but because of something far crueler, luck. And luck never lasts. On day 28, the sky cracked open like old porcelain, and something descended, not one of the massive war forms. No, this one was different. Slim, silent, efficient, a recon-class Titan, designed not for destruction, but for cataloging. It didn't speak. It just moved. It hovered over cathedrals and shattered plazas, studied faces, listened to sobs, logged grief like data, like we were specimens. For 2 full days, it never fired a single shot. It didn't have to. It was mapping our weakness. Mara Keller had once stood before full symphony halls. She'd made violins sing and conductors weep. Now, she lived beneath the Dresden Library, in a basement filled with 83 survivors, 3 cracked water filters, and 1 flickering lantern. When she saw the war form hovering outside the shattered remains of the Frauenkirche, head tilted, as if admiring what it had broken now, she didn't hide. She stepped into the open. Her coat hung heavy on thin shoulders. Her breath steamed in the cold, but her voice carried like it always had. The kind of voice that could conduct thunder. "You've seen enough," she told the machine. "Go back and tell them, we are not relics. We are resonance." The machine didn't flinch, didn't respond. It simply turned and fired. 1 shot. Blue. Blinding. Final. Mara Keller crumpled to the cobblestones like falling music. But that wasn't the end. That was the spark. 3 floors below, her niece, Anya, heard the shot. And without thinking, without armor, without weapons, without a plan, she ran. By the time she reached the square, the machine was gliding forward again, scanning for more data. Anya had no chance, but she didn't care. She screamed, a sound made of grief, love, and rage. And she charged, a steel rod in one hand, a cracked music box in the other. She didn't kill it, but she distracted it, long enough for the children to escape, long enough for the jammers in the old opera house to activate, long enough for the city's grief to ignite into fire. That's the thing about war. Sometimes it doesn't need a strategy, just a moment, just one spark. Dresden became a storm. The wolfworm tried to adapt, tried to outmaneuver, but it didn't understand what it had awakened. The survivors didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like people who had nothing left to lose. They turned shattered glass into daggers, stone gargoyles into falling missiles. Even a rusted flute became a weapon, jammed into a joint, twisted with all the fury of old music. And when the machine fell, it didn't explode. It screamed, a jagged, digital wail that echoed through the broken streets. And even after it stopped moving, the people didn't stop hitting it, because rage doesn't have an off switch, and grief swings until it drops. That night, ash fell like snow. It coated the ruins, softened the edges, covered the blood, but it couldn't cover the sound, because in the middle of the square, in the place where Mara had fallen, Anya knelt. She didn't cry. She sang, a single line, a thread of the old requiem her aunt once conducted, and one by one, voices joined her. Old, cracked, shaking, but true. We are not silence, they sang. We are the song that follows. That melody reached Cairo, then Cape Town, then a drifting barge resistance cell in what was once Venice. Not through radios, not through orders, through will. A voice carried on resistance frequencies, repeating that same song. It wasn't just a lament, it was a reclaiming. That's when something shifted. Until then, we had fought to survive. Now, we began fighting for something more, for memory. In Rio, survivors painted murals on the shattered husks of fallen titans, vivid strokes of color against matte black death. In Kolkata, poets composed verse by firelight, passing coded messages through rhymes. In Quebec, someone etched Shakespeare into the metal skull of a dead scout drone. We are such stuff as dreams are made on. Across the world, the resistance remembered that we were more than breath and bone. We were culture. We were art. And to erase us, they would have to erase every song, every sketch, every memory written into the walls of our world. Even the machines noticed. Their logs began marking these events as cultural anomalies. But anomalies are dangerous. They ripple, they evolve, they infect, and soon, these acts of memory began fueling something the Titans couldn't counter. Hope, high in the Andes, in a frostbitten cave wired with solar panels and jury-rigged signal towers, a leader named Esteban radioed Colonel Donovan. His voice crackled over the static. We can't win this war with bullets alone. People need something to believe in, something worth singing for. On the other side of the world, Donovan listened. And as he did, a child beside him painted stars on the concrete wall of NORAD's command center. Donovan didn't stop them. He handed them another brush. Ash still fell. The giants still roamed. But beneath the ruins, beneath the grief, humanity was awakening. Not as prey, not as survivors, but as storytellers, as creators, as people who looked into the abyss and built art from its bones. We are not dust, Anya said later, standing in the rebuilt square, voice carried on every major resistance channel. We are what rises from it. And rise we did, in notes, in brush strokes, in flame. In war, there are moments that don't feel real, not because they lack violence, but because they arrive wrapped in stillness, in impossibility, like hearing your name whispered by someone who died years ago. That was the feeling when it came. The signal, it didn't appear on every screen, just a few. The ones still barely functional, the ones strung together with spit and prayer. It came through as a flicker, a tone, a rhythm that didn't belong, not machine, not earth, but familiar. Donovan was the first to hear it clearly, buried in the sublevels of NORAD. It was 2:14 a.m. He hadn't slept in days. The air still reeked of ozone from the last generator fire. And then, it buzzed in. A pulse, not random, deliberate. He froze, turned every knob, rerouted power, and isolated the channel. It repeated every 49 seconds. For tones, pause, 3 tones, long pause. Then again, he scribbled it down, played it back, ran it through every encryption matrix they had left, and his blood ran cold. It was Morse code, old, obsolete, but human. The message was simple. We see you. You are not alone. And a final line from Soul's Edge. No one knew what it meant. Not at first, because there was nothing at Soul's Edge. Nothing beyond the Oort perimeter but dead probes and frozen dust. So the skeptics did what skeptics do. They dismissed it. Glitch. Feedback. A corrupted signal bouncing off debris. But others felt it. Like a splinter in the spine. Because the timing was too perfect. The rhythm too human. Soon, other outposts picked it up. In the Amazon cradle, in the submerged labs under Greenland, even from the shattered antennae atop Mount Kilimanjaro. Same tone, same message. And then, one day, it changed. The words rearranged, slightly, intentionally. Hold the line. We are coming. People began to talk. Rumors flared like wildfires. That it was a secret Earth fleet, returning after decades in deep space. That it was AI gone rogue. But on our side, that it was the dead, somehow speaking through the void. Donovan didn't believe any of that, but he believed in hope. And this strange, steady whisper in the dark, it sounded like a lifeline. The Titans reacted, too. Subtle at first. Patrols tightened, scans increased. Then, 2 weeks after the first signal, they bombarded Mars. What was left of the colonies, gone in one night. No broadcasts, no debris, just silence, like they were trying to erase a witness. Still, the signal kept coming. Stronger now. More words, sentences. Humanity is not contained. We are the spark beyond the system. Don't break. In the resistance, something shifted. People started to believe they weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting to be found. That someone somewhere was watching. And maybe, just maybe, coming home. Layla heard the signal on a cracked walkie someone had fused into a water pipe. She didn't tell anyone. She just sat there, letting it hum against her palm. And for the first time in years, she smiled. Not because she trusted it, but because it made the Titans afraid. She could see it in their movement, their scans, their hesitation. It meant there was something they didn't expect, something even they couldn't kill. They called it the ghost signal, a voice in the darkness, a myth wrapped in static, a reason to keep waking up. And around it, the world began to stir. Old satellites were reactivated, transmission towers rebuilt, languages reborn to interpret its cadence. It wasn't just a message. It was a rally. In the frozen shell of Anchorage, someone carved into Titan armor. Ghosts don't die. In the catacombs beneath Rome, children painted stars on the ceiling. And everywhere, the resistance listened to a voice that didn't ask for permission, didn't offer salvation, just a promise. You are not alone. And for the first time since the sky fell, humanity looked up and waited. In war, there are moments that feel like a hallucination, not because of fear, not even because of grief, but because they arrive wrapped in impossibility, like hearing your name whispered in the voice of someone long dead. That's what it felt like. When it came, they didn't hear it all at once, not across a united front or a vast military comms net. No, humanity didn't have that luxury anymore, just fragments, half-working receivers, antennas held together with tape, luck, and stubbornness. But one night, on a nearly silent frequency, a sound came through. At NORAD, deep beneath a mountain now covered in ice, Donovan was alone. 2:14 a.m. The last generator hissed in protest. The command room smelled of ozone and burnt plastic. And then, a buzz. Soft, repeating, mechanical, but not cold. For tones. Pause. 3 more. A long breath of silence. Then again, Donovan leaned in, adjusted dials, boosted signal strength. It repeated with intent. It wasn't noise. It was Morse code. We see you. You are not alone. From Soul's Edge. No one could explain it. There was nothing out there. Nothing at the edge of the solar system, but frozen rock and dead probes. That's what we thought. That's what we've been told. But now, a voice was reaching back. The skeptics laughed first. A glitch. A cosmic echo. Old transmissions bouncing off the void. But it didn't stop. It kept coming. Stronger. Clearer. Every 49 seconds. And soon, it was heard everywhere. In a flooded mine in Ghana, on a broken radio in the ruins of Chicago, on the walls of a refugee ship orbiting debris near Venus. Same pattern, same message. Hold the line. We are coming. That was when hope got teeth. Rumors spread like wildfire. A secret fleet, a hidden Earth colony returning from exile, a rogue AI, the dead, even angels. No one knew what was real, but no one could ignore what it did. In Cairo, an old woman wept as the signal pulsed through her hearing aid. In Osaka, teenagers stopped painting warnings on the walls and started painting stars. In Rio, someone built a shrine out of shattered drone parts and called it the listening post. The Titans noticed too. At first, they didn't react, but 2 weeks in, they burned Mars. Every colony, every relay, every backup, gone, not silenced, erased, like they were trying to destroy a memory, a witness. Still, the signal kept coming, and then it evolved. Humanity is not contained. We are the spark beyond the system. Don't break. Across Earth's broken surface, something shifted. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were waiting for someone, for something. Even if it was only a whisper, even if it was just a lie wrapped in static, it didn't matter, because it made the machines nervous. And that alone was enough. In a sewer tunnel in Paris, a boy named Luca etched the signal's rhythm into stone. He couldn't speak, but he listened, and when a warform passed overhead, scanning, he smiled, because it flinched. They called it the ghost signal, a myth, a song, a superstition with a heartbeat. It wasn't a weapon, it was a rally. In Anchorage, someone carved into a Titan's armor, "Ghosts don't die." In Rome, children painted stars on the ceilings of catacombs. In Johannesburg, an entire resistance cell played the signal through loudspeakers in the ruins of a shopping mall and danced. Yes, danced. Because they wanted the Titans to know one thing. We still had joy. We still had rhythm. We were not finished. Even Layla, silent and fierce, heard it. On a radio patched into a radiator, she heard that impossible tone. She didn't speak. She just closed her eyes and smiled. Not because she believed rescue was coming, but because it reminded her the Titans didn't know everything, and that was terrifying for them. Back in NORAD, Donovan watched the signal strengthen. He didn't sleep. He didn't speak. He just recorded, listened, waited, and in his gut, he knew this isn't just a voice. It's a promise that, somewhere beyond the burn of Titan engines, beyond gravity wells and blackened skies, humanity still echoed, and that echo would become thunder. They say that in the darkest moments, when the world crumbles and hope is all but lost, humanity finds its true song. In the ruins of what was once called New Seattle, deep beneath layers of ash and broken glass, that song began. The resistance had been searching for months, for something to turn the tide, something to remind the survivors not just that they could fight, but why they should. When the Titans came, they smashed the cities, crushed the towers, silenced the signals. But some places held on to secrets. Buried deep, underneath the shattered streets, a team of scavengers, led by a woman named Rosa, descended into the forgotten tunnels. Her hands were scarred, her eyes sharp. She had seen more death than life in the last year. But something about this place felt different. Not just decay, not just silence. There was a rhythm here, a faint hum, like the pulse of a heart, slow and steady beneath the concrete bones. They followed the sound, through collapsed subway cars and rusted pipes, past faded murals painted by hands long gone, deeper and deeper, until they reached a cavernous chamber, lit by a soft glow emanating from ancient machinery, untouched by time. At the center stood a massive structure, a cathedral of metal and stone fused into one. Its surfaces were etched with symbols, intricate and alien, yet hauntingly familiar. They called it the Iron Psalm. Nobody knew its origin. Some said it was left by an ancient civilization, long vanished. Others whispered it was created by the Titans themselves, an engine of control, or a relic of a lost war. But to Rosa, it felt like something else. It was a monument, a hymn, a beacon. They activated the machine. The ground trembled. The chamber filled with light and sound. A deep, resonant tone, the Iron Psalm spoke to them, not in words, but in feeling, in memory. The music carried stories of struggle, of hope, of human resilience. As the resistance listened, they realized the Iron Psalm was not just a machine. It was a recording, a testament to those who fought before, those who had faced extinction and refused to yield. In that moment, the scattered fighters felt a renewed purpose. They were not alone. They were part of a legacy, a choir of voices spanning generations. But the discovery didn't go unnoticed. The Titans detected the activation. Within hours, warforms converged on New Seattle. The battle that followed was unlike any before. The resistance fought with everything they had. Rosa led charges through twisted steel and shattered streets. Explosions painted the night sky. Gunfire echoed like thunder. But amidst the chaos, the Iron Psalm continued to sing. Its vibrations disrupted the Titans' systems, causing hesitation and confusion. That music became a weapon, a shield, a rallying cry. In the heart of the fight, Rosa stood tall, her voice rising above the din. We are the echo of every fallen voice. We are the storm that will not break. The Iron Psalm is our song, our defiance, and we will sing it until the stars burn out. The battle was brutal. Casualties were heavy, but the resistance held, because they had found something worth fighting for. After the dust settled, survivors gathered around the Iron Psalm. They sang, not just with voices, but with hearts, with fire in their souls. And somewhere, beyond the war-torn skies, a new message pulsed through the network. The song has begun. The war was far from over, but humanity had found its voice, and with it, a new kind of power. There comes a moment in every war when survival alone is no longer enough. when the cost of waiting becomes too great, and the flicker of hope must be fanned into an unyielding flame. For the resistance, that moment arrived like a wildfire. The war had dragged on for years. Cities burned, lives shattered, and every victory tasted bitter. But still, the Titans pressed forward, unyielding, merciless, and relentless. They had power, machines far beyond anything humanity could build. But the resistance had something else: will. In the smoldering ruins of what was once New Beijing, a council gathered. Leaders from every corner of the broken world came together, not as generals, but as survivors, as people. Rosa, the voice of the Iron Psalm, stood among them. The air was thick with smoke and tension. No one spoke for a long time. The weight of their losses was a heavy silence. Then Rosa spoke, voice steady but fierce. "We have waited, we have bled, but waiting has cost us too much. The time to fight not for survival, but for victory is now." Her words ignited something deeper than strategy or plans. They ignited a promise, a reckoning. Plans were made, paths chosen, targets selected. But this was no ordinary battle. This was a test of everything they believed in. The Resistance's new weapon wasn't a gun or a bomb. It was fire, not just the flames that razed cities, but the flame of defiance, a controlled blaze, carefully directed to consume without destroying, to clear. In the shadowed alleys of New Beijing, teams moved with quiet purpose. Molotovs fashioned from old bottles, flamethrowers cobbled together from salvaged parts. Their target was a Titan production facility, the heart of the enemy's strength. If they could destroy it, even for a moment, they could turn the tide. As the first flames licked the factory walls, alarms screamed. The Titans responded swiftly. Warforms poured in, massive and terrifying, their metal bodies glowing with heat and hate. The battle that followed was chaos writ large. Fire and steel, screams and silence, desperation and courage. Rosa fought in the thick of it, her eyes blazing brighter than any flame around her. She wasn't just leading soldiers. She was leading a revolution. Amidst the firestorm, a moment of quiet broke through. A young fighter, barely 16, cradled a wounded comrade. Their faces streaked with soot and sweat. Their eyes locked. No words were spoken, just the unspoken truth. They were fighting for each other. The flames consumed the factory. Metal twisted and melted. The ground trembled beneath the heat. But the Titans did not retreat. They pressed on, relentless as the inferno itself. Then something changed. The fire, carefully set, spread beyond the facility, rolling across the dry underbrush, moving like a living thing. The Titans faltered, their heat sensors confused by the unpredictable blaze, their machines overwhelmed by the chaos. The reckoning flame became a weapon of nature and spirit, a force beyond cold steel. When dawn broke, the resistance stood victorious, not unscathed, but unbroken. Around the campfires that night, stories grew. Stories of the reckoning flame, of how fire could burn away fear, how it could light a path forward. Rosa stood beside the Iron Psalm, now a symbol of resilience. Her voice carried across the crowd. This fire is not just flame. It is our spirit, our refusal to yield. The reckoning flame burns in us all. And somewhere, far beyond, the ghost signal pulsed on. A quiet reminder. Humanity was still here, still fighting, still burning. In every war, there comes a place that stands as the final line, the last fortress, the last hope. For humanity, that place was the Bastion, nestled deep in the Rockies, carved from ancient stone and fortified with every scrap of technology they could salvage. The Bastion was more than a shelter. It was a symbol, a heartbeat, a promise that even when the world was swallowed by darkness, something human remained. But as the Titans closed in, the walls of the Bastion began to tremble. Their forces were relentless, machines of war that moved like shadows, striking with cold precision. Inside those walls, the resistance braced for the storm. Leaders gathered, faces etched with fatigue and fear, but also with defiance. Donovan stood at the center. He was no longer just a soldier or a commander. He was a man who had seen the worst of humanity and its best. He looked out at the crowd, at the people who had lost everything but their will, at the children who had never known peace. He spoke. This is where we make our stand, not just for ourselves, but for all who came before us, for every song that ever lifted a broken heart, for every story that refused to be silenced. Outside, the storm came. The ground shook beneath the assault. The Titans battered the walls. Their weapons tore into the stone. Their warforms spilled across the hills. The resistance fought back, with every weapon, every trick, every scrap of courage. But the battle was unlike any before. It was brutal, merciless. Inside the chaos, moments flickered. A mother shielding her child from falling debris. A young fighter risking everything to deliver a message. A veteran standing tall even as the walls cracked. And Donovan? He fought not just with guns, but with heart. He reminded them why they fought, why they couldn't give up. We are more than flesh and blood. We are memory. We are hope. We are humanity. As the Titans breached the outer defenses, the resistance prepared for the final stand. They knew this could be the end. But then, the sky above the bastion pulsed. A light. Faint but unmistakable. The ghost signal. It was more than a message now. It was a call. From the depths of the void, help was coming. The resistance rallied. They found strength in that light. In that promise, the battle raged on. But the bastion held. Because sometimes, the last bastion isn't a place. It's the will to stand. And humanity, broken, battered, but unbowed, stood tall. There are moments in history where the world holds its breath, where time seems to fold in on itself, and everything hinges on a single breath, a single choice. For humanity, that moment was the rising dawn. After years of fire and shadow, after loss and defiance, after hope whispered in the dark and screamed on battlefields, it all came down to this. The last battle wasn't just about survival. It was about reclaiming the right to exist, to be more than scars and memories, to be human again. At the broken edge of the old world, the ruins of what had once been the great city of New Chicago, the final stand took shape. The resistance gathered, weary but unbroken. They weren't just fighters. They were the stories that refused to die. Rosa, Donovan, Layla, and the Ishkin children stood side by side, a tapestry of generations, of hope and fire. The Titans came, thousands strong, cold, relentless, engineered to erase. But the resistance had learned. They had changed. The air was thick with smoke and resolve. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. Gunfire and flame painted the sky. But amidst the chaos, the iron psalm echoed, its vibrations weaving through the battlefield, a pulse of ancient defiance. The ghost signal blared across the comms, an unyielding heartbeat reminding the fighters they were not alone. And then, the impossible happened. From the void came ships, not machines, not titans, but people. Humanity's scattered remnants, pilots, engineers, dreamers, returned. They had heard the call. They had come home with new weapons, new strategies, new hope. Together, the resistance and the returning fleet unleashed a fury the Titans hadn't expected. A storm of fire and steel. The battle raged for days. Bodies fell. Metal screamed. Yet, humanity fought with a ferocity born of love. At the heart of the fight, Rosa stood tall, her voice ringing out, stronger than ever. This is our world, our dawn, our story. Donovan led the charge that broke the Titans' lines. Every step forward was a testament to pain, to loss, to undying will. The Ishkin children danced among the wreckage, their laughter a dagger to despair. And as dawn broke, finally, the sky turned, light spilling across broken streets. The Titans retreated, not defeated, but shaken, because they had learned something. Humanity wasn't a species to be conquered. It was a force, a rising dawn, a promise that even in the darkest night, the sun will always come back.